Section 6.7, Division with Polynomials. There are two types of problems in this section. The first type represents these first two examples. The directions ask us to simplify by dividing. So what you want to notice here for both problems is that we are dividing a polynomial, this polynomial, trinomial, and trinomial. We're dividing by one term, monomial and monomial. So the first type of problem in this section is a polynomial that's divided by one term, a monomial. If we have division by just one term, then what we're going to do is we're going to take our problem and we're going to break it up into three fractions, and then we reduce each fraction. So for example, we would take this problem and we would just divide it into three fractions and then reduce. So we would have 9x squared divided by 3. And then I just recopy the same signs, right? So minus 12x divided by 3 plus 5 divided by 3. So I basically kept everything the same. I just took the problem, broke it up into three fractions. Divide every term by 3. And then all we do is reduce and simplify. So for this first fraction, I know that 3 goes into 9 3 times. So we have 3x squared minus 3 goes into 12 4 times, 4x, plus 5 over 3 we cannot reduce, so then recopy it. This is the final answer. Next, we have example 2. And I have a trinomial again, 1, 2, 3 terms divided by one term. So we break this up into three fractions and we reduce. This problem has these variables with the exponents, so we got to be a little bit careful with that, but it works the same way. So we have 12x cubed y, divide that by 6x squared y, plus 6x squared y squared, divide that by 6x squared y, minus 3xy, divide that by 6x squared y. All we have to do is just reduce all three fractions, okay? So be a little careful with the exponents. The first fraction, so let's just start with the numbers. 6 goes into 12 2 times. Then we have x cubed and x squared. So if you think about this, there are 3 x's in the numerator, 2 x's in the denominator. I can reduce all 2 x's in the denominator and there will be 1 x left in the numerator. And then y divided by y, that's just 1. So I can reduce the y and we're just left with 2x. Plus 6 goes into 6 once. X squared goes into x squared once. And then we have y squared and y. So basically I can reduce the y in the denominator and 1 y left in the numerator. So all we're left with is just y. Minus, you've got 3 over 6. So 3 goes into itself once. It goes into 6 twice. Okay, so we have, when we reduce 3 over 6, we get 1/2. Then this x reduces and there's 1 left in the denominator. And then y over y, that just reduces, so then we have 1 over 2x, and that is our final answer. Okay, next we have the second type of problem. The directions are a little bit different. So pay attention to the directions. It will kind of give you a clue that this is slightly different from the problem that we just looked at. it says divide. Write your answer in the form Q plus R over D. What is Q? Q is your quotient. R is the remainder. D is what we are dividing by, the divisor. So the problem is also written differently. See, the first two problems were written as fractions. These are not written as fractions. They're still division problems, but they're not written as fractions. They're written differently. We have to use long division here. Okay, so why? Because what we are dividing by is no longer one term. We are now dividing by a binomial, two terms. So when we divide by a binomial, we have to use a long division. So how do you set up long division? Oh, it looks like this. You write your binomial first, and then we're going to write our trinomial. Just make sure that this trinomial is in the correct order. If it's mixed up, like for example, if the 6 was written first, then you just have to make sure that when you write it here, that we put it in the correct order. Descending order, largest exponent to smallest. Okay, so now, let me fix. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically just write out our long division. It might look a little complicated, but it's actually not. So these are the steps. So we start with x squared. So what you want to ask yourself is x, this x, times what will give me x squared. So x times x. X times x gives me x squared. Whatever this first term is, that's what you have to get. If the first term is positive, you have to get a positive. If the first term is negative, we have to get a negative. So you have to put an x here because we have to get x squared. This x multiplies with that x. These are exactly the same. That's what you want. Then I have to take this x and I have to multiply it with the 3 as well. So it's going to be x times a positive 3 gives me plus 3x. Notice that the like terms line up. They have to line up because what do you do after you get your number up here for long division? You have to subtract. Be careful when you subtract because remember, since I have two terms, this negative has to be distributed to both terms. So I use parentheses to remind myself that it's really minus x squared and then minus 3x. The negative distributes to both terms. So what happens is x squared minus x squared, that goes away. That's what you want. This first term has to go away. If it doesn't, you made a mistake. Then I have x minus 3x, okay? Because remember, we are taking this negative, distributing it. So this is now really a minus 3x. X minus 3x gives me a negative 2x. Bring down the negative 6. You will start the same process that we did up here. We do the same process for this part. You ask yourself, how do I get a negative 2x? X times what is negative 2x? Well, x times a negative 2. Negative 2 times x, negative 2x. Perfect. These have to be the same. Same sign, same term. This negative 2, you have to multiply it with the 3. Minus 6. Again, like terms have to line up. What's the next thing? You subtract. But we have to distribute the negative to both terms. When you distribute the negative, 2x becomes positive, and this term becomes plus 6. So you just want to keep that in mind. If you want to write it at the bottom here, you can, so you remember that the signs change, or you could just remember that in your head. So what happens is I have minus 2x plus 2x, that's gone. Remember, that's what we want. This first term has to go away. And then we have minus 6 plus 6, and that gives us 0. Whatever number you get down here, that's your remainder. Okay, so this is my remainder. And then the number that's over here, this binomial, this is called your divisor. That's our D. And then your answer here, that is your Q. Q for quotient. So this is how we're going to write our answer. Quotient plus remainder over divisor. So quotient, whatever's up here, your answer, that's your quotient. X minus 2, okay, plus your remainder, which in this case is 0, over your divisor, x plus 3. This is my answer. Since the remainder is 0, I can also just write x minus 2 because that also works for my answer. So any of these two would be okay as your solution. Let's look at a problem where the remainder is not 0. So the remainder could be 0 or it could be another number. So let's take a look at example 2. Again, you are dividing by a binomial. So binomial goes on the outside. Y plus 4. Trinomial goes on the inside. Make sure the trinomial is in order. Largest exponent to smallest. We will follow the same process. You have to get y squared. So y times what is y squared? Well, y times y. Y times y is y squared. Remember, these have to be the same. Y times 4 plus 4y. Subtract, distribute the negative. Y squared minus y squared is 0. Perfect. That's what I want. Negative y minus 4y, that gives us a negative 5y. Bring down minus 42. Okay, start the process over. How do you get negative 5y? Y times minus 5 gives me what I want. Negative 5y. These are exactly the same along with the sign. Negative 5 times 4 is minus 20. You have to subtract. Use parentheses. The negative has to be distributed to both terms. Negative 5y plus 5y gives me 0, which is what we want. Negative 42, this becomes plus 20. Negative 42 plus 20, that comes out to be negative 22. Remember, this is your remainder. That's your r. This is our quotient. This is our divisor. Let's write our answer. Q plus r over d. So we have y minus 5, okay, minus 22 over y plus 4. And that is our final answer.